Caleb Calhoun, I thought we were on the verge of a very, very good Super Bowl, and I saw that hold, and I did the math in my head with the clock, and I was like, this is over. And we had friends over, and it was just I don't know, it was a little deflating the way it ended, I thought. But congratulations to Trey Smith for a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, if you think you had it rough, I had a parlay yesterday, and I hit every one of my parlays except Patrick Mahomes throwing for 225 yards. So that cost me the whole parlay. And I was so mad about that hold because I'm like, if they don't get that hold there's a chance Patrick Mahomes gets the ball back again, either in overtime or to try to do a desperate game-winning drive. And I'm like, at that point, he could have hit the 225. But I will say, for people complaining about it, there was a drive early in the first half. The only Chiefs drive that really stalled in the first half was because the Eagles got away with a blatant pass interference. I think it was like the third drive of the game, and they didn't call it. So, bad calls even out. We always remember the bad call at the end of the game, but no one ever remembers the bad calls that went throughout the game, and that was one that I think stood out before the end of the game. So we got to go there. Reminds me of, to bring it to college since we covered Tennessee, I will never forget Florida fans in 2001 when Tennessee beats Florida 34-32, insisting there was a hold on that 2-point conversion on Jabbar Gaffney, and screaming and crying that Jabbar Gaffney was held. But they just they totally ignore the fact that there were 2 Rex Grossman fumbles that the refs ruled Rex Grossman down earlier in that game. They just conveniently leave that part out.
I don't think the officials routinely decide the direction of games. Now, I'm talking about the NFL and college football. I think there are times when officials get caught up in Rupp Arena. I think there are times that they get caught up in the momentum of the game. And I say that, Caleb, because I've been an official, and I've officiated baseball as an umpire. I did basketball. I did flag football just for intramural sake to get through college. But I do think officials get caught up in the excitement of the game. And you mentioned the Jabbar Gaffney catch, no catch. I will tell you right now that I think those officials got caught up in the game and ruled that a catch. By the letter of the law, should have been a catch? Perhaps, but that's just too instantaneous to rule a catch. And there have been other times too that I thought that officials have gotten caught up in the game, so to speak. So I don't think they go in and intentionally say, I'm going to help this team or not. But I do think they get caught up in the game. And
no, I wasn't referring to the Jabbar Gaffney catch, non-catch. Just so.
Right. No, I know. And but okay. that to me was one where I felt like they got caught up in the game. It felt like Florida, they were destined to come down on that drive and end up winning the football game. And you felt like it. There's momentum in a game that you can sit there and watch. But when you're an official with a whistle in your hand, you've got to be really careful not to get caught up in that. And I remember umpiring one time, and the team had a comeback from like 9 runs, and I didn't get caught up or excited. I try to explain this the best way I can. You just feel like the momentum of the game's happening. And I remember I blew a call, one that stands out to this very day, 25 years later. But I think there are a couple of places that the officials get caught up more than not. And the biggest one to me is Rupp Arena. I think that the officials there get caught up in the moment. I don't think they say, hey, my cousin's brother's sister's son went to Kentucky, so I want to call it, or I've got money in the game, or anything like that. But I think Rupp is notorious for officials getting caught up in the game, caught up in a run, and suddenly the calls are against you. Any other examples that you can think of in the SEC where there are times that the officiating seems suspect for whatever reason?
You're right. Rupp's the only one in basketball. I see it a lot in football, more than basketball. I see them get caught up in the moment. But there are some times where it's like, if you were caught up in the moment, you wouldn't have made that call. So sometimes I get a little mixed either way. I think in the NBA, sometimes they get caught up massively in the moment. I mean, let's be honest. We can debate until the end of time whether or not Michael Jordan pushed off on that last game winner, but there was no way in the world they were going to make that call. There's no way you make that call.
No. And I will say this, you should officiate the same in the last minute as the first minute, but it's human nature, and that would have been a really tough call to make at the time, if you want to talk about the Jordan call. But, I go back to that Gaffney call, and I thought that was a momentum thing where the officials felt that Florida was going to do that. The call last night, the defender up and owned it, but still, that was very frustrating. Travis says reps might as well wear crimson in Tuscaloosa. Do you believe that? Do you believe referees look out for Alabama? Because I know that SEC fans and Tennessee fans think that referees look out for Alabama, and that you have instances in which the announcers look out for Alabama. Do you buy that, Caleb, or is that something that's just fun to say?
I haven't watched enough. I've watched a lot. I have not seen enough instances of refs of handing it to Alabama. I'm sorry. People just say that about dominant teams. What I will say, and Dave, this is a big deal going forward. It's funny. We kind of just transitioned into this, and I just thought of this, but the college football playoff is expanding to 12 teams. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to have a vested interest in getting as many teams in the playoff as possible. And they have their own referees. And you start to wonder, is that going to impact, like if an SEC game in November can determine whether or not an extra team gets into the playoff? Is that going to have an impact? I mean, I thought I've watched some SEC championship games where there was a vested interest in making sure the team that had a chance at the national title won. That doesn't mean that they were rigging the game, but I'll give you one. Tennessee Auburn 2004 SEC championship game. Remember the flags that were thrown in that game against Tennessee? Like the numerous flags. And there were a couple, I'm like, they don't make that call if Tennessee's the undefeated team and Auburn's the 2-loss team. I just don't think they make that call.
I can see that. I want to ask this question. I want to put it on our our Twitter poll right now. Do you believe officials purposely make favorable calls for dynasties? And I will ask our message board that now. Do you believe that happens? Whether it's purposefully in a sense of, hey, I want Alabama to win because of whatever reason you might have, or you just get caught up in the moment. But I flip-flopped that last night. Does that call go against the Chiefs in the exact same position? I don't think it does. I think Patrick Mahomes is a lovable guy. I think that.
But there was a pass interference that they blatantly missed in the first half that killed the Chiefs drive. And that's where I'm at with it. And, I get the debate on that, but it's like refs miss calls, and we only see the ones that are missed at the end of the game. We don't see the ones that are missed throughout the game that on the other side, I feel like. And also, I mean, just to go to the Gaffney called up in the moment thing, I've maintained for years, I'm sorry, Tennessee fans, Florida's winning that game anyway. If it would have been third down from like the 4-yard line, and if they don't convert on third down, they kick a field goal in fourth down, and they had all the momentum. They're winning that game in overtime. Tennessee's defense was gassed. The refs call on the Gaffney non-catch, they're not at fault for the defense letting Florida go 91 yards on that final drive. They're not at fault for Randy Sanders having Travis Henry and needing 1 yard to get a first down to run out the clock, and he chooses to call a toss play instead of just to run up the middle with Henry when you know Henry's going to get it. And so, I mean, that's where I'm at. It's very just like last night. The refs didn't make Jalen Hurts fumble that ball and give it away. They aren't the reason that Kansas City had a punt return to the 5-yard line. Again, that was a ticky-tack call at the end that you're right, could have gone either way. I don't think you make that call. But you're talking about a ticky-tack call that they didn't make versus a call that they didn't make in the first half that they should have made that should have gone Kansas City's way. That was a blatant pass interference on Kansas City's third drive.
It was an interesting game. Everybody is talking about how they hated Rihanna, but I liked Rihanna. I thought that was a good show.
I like seeing more things exposed when Rihanna performs the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how she was up at the top there. I would have freaked out on that whole Super Bowl show. I'm not a big heights guy, but I ask you, and then on our message board, is there a situation in which you feel as if that Tennessee has been wronged in some shape, form, or fashion? Is the Gaffney catch number one? Gene said he didn't enjoy that halftime show. I didn't enjoy it because of the music. I enjoyed it just because of, frankly, the the lifts and all that crazy stuff they use. I thought it was pretty insane. At first, I thought that it was some sort of I don't know, like an effect, like they weren't really up in the air. And then after a while, I'm like, she's strapped down. They're really up in the air. So I thought that was pretty wild. I enjoyed it. I don't know much of her music. I mean, I recognize 3 or 4 of the songs, but I enjoyed it. So other than Rupp is, well, I just asked this: the officials in college football and basketball, who are more likely to go with the home team? Is it Alabama in Tuscaloosa, or is it Kentucky in Rupp? I don't think it's close. I think it's basketball in Kentucky and Rupp. What about you, Caleb?
Easily. I think it's basketball in Kentucky and Rupp. And I think part of that is Rupp's kind of louder than Alabama. I mean, I've been to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I'm sure you have too. It's not really the loudest stadium in the SEC. I can think of like 5 stadiums that are louder that might get you more caught up in the moment. Nayland being one of them, honestly.
I know. I don't think it's top 6 necessarily. So
yeah, I think the Swamp is louder. I think I hear Kai Field's louder, and I believe it. I know Baton Rouge is louder. So, you know,
I thought Auburn was louder, quite frankly.
Yeah, Auburn is louder.
So anyway, your thoughts on that, as we remind you that you can go and take care of your pet at crafttreats.com. Crafttreats.com has a promo code off the hook where you save 20% on the chill pills, which will help with your pet's anxiety, will help with your pet's arthritis, and how about your pet's digestive issues as well. They've got CBD in them. They've also got treats that don't. They've just got great holistic treats. Use the promo code off the hook. That is off the hook, and you get 20% off. It is just that simple, pretty cool. Off the hook. All right, so I'm going to ask this question on our Twitter page. Why do officials make favorable calls for dynasties like Kentucky basketball and Bama football? Caught up in the moment, looking out for the tops, and just a coincidence. Maybe it is just a coincidence. I don't think that's the case, but I just think basketball more than any other sport that you can get caught up in a run. Caleb, I've always thought that you can, before you know it, get caught up in a run, and you're a part of this momentum swing in basketball as much as anything. Eric Kane will join us, and looking forward to that, from VolQuest.com and Locked On Vols. We'll get his thoughts on Tennessee basketball over the weekend, recruiting, state of the Vols. Love Eric Kane. I've loved his work for a long time. So excited to have him on board. And Gene says the visuals were neat. I'll give you that. But other than that, CJ said the dancing was good. The outfits ridiculous. The outfits were kind of stupid. It reminds me of that puffy thing that Puff Daddy wore in the video with Mace. Do you remember that? It was all puffy stuff.
Man, you were so dated still calling him Puff Daddy. But
I don't know what to call him. Puffy, P. Diddy, whatever. Gene says, I mean, 1,000 Oompa Loompas all grown up and dancing. Okay, I didn't like that part. Travis says it's so much more fast paced, I suppose, easier to miss calls. No, I think it is. I think you get caught up in runs. And is it Brian Russell that was pushed off by Jordan?
Yeah. Although, again,
Byron Russell.
Although, again, let's be fair. Again, we talk about things that led to it. Byron Russell was backing up that way anyway, so he would have fallen with or without Michael Jordan's hand. I think Michael Jordan's hand was to balance himself more than it was to push off Byron Russell, if you really look at that shot.
I agree, but that's a call that if Dave or Caleb do that move, that's called.
Yeah, probably.
Michael Jordan does that move, it's not called.
Well, also, the culprit of that is, rest in peace, Jerry Sloan, because the only reason that shot happened is Michael Jordan stole it from Karl Malone under the basket, because Jerry Sloan apparently, and there was a formation, they run the exact same play to Karl Malone every time they do that. So Michael knew the play was going to Karl Malone, so he ran from the backside to strip it from Karl Malone. That's on Jerry Sloan. Michael Jordan should not have known that where Malone was going with the ball right there. So
I thought that was a great steal. I give Jordan a lot of credit for that, and knowing that and what you just said. Zach England of Best and Brock is a personal injury attorney, and he is just absolutely phenomenal. Zach England of Best and Brock can go toe-to-toe with the insurance attorneys and make sure you get your just rewards for whatever personal injury issue you might have been involved with. That's Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach England of Best and Brock. Zach's got your back. Travis says Caleb works for the Refs Association now. Maybe. I don't know. We're not to the point at Off the Hook Sports where we're paying that well where you can't have side gigs. Maybe that's the case.
I am not. Oh my gosh. No, I don't work for the Refs Association. I just think that refs get blamed way too much. There are maybe 2 instances where I think in history refs should really be blamed. The 2001 Western Conference Finals, which I do believe was rigged. That's the one that Tim Donaghy said that they tried to fix to make the Kings Lakers go Game 7. I believe him because I watched Game 6. It was weird, the foul calls. And I think 2003 Florida State was rigged for Florida State. I watched the missed calls in that game, and there were ACC officials, and that was when Florida State stomped on Florida's logo. I thought that game was rigged. Those were the only 2.
Let me ask you this. So let's just talk about one particular call because I'm going to go with Jabbar Gaffney. But what is the worst call to ever go against the Vols?
Ooh, the worst call to ever go against the Vols.
I think that's got to be it.
That's
and the funny part about that too, Caleb, is by rule that was a catch at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean that technically wasn't. It just didn't look right. The whole 9 yards of it just didn't look right.
I'm going. Okay, it's a. Does it have to be a game the Vols lost? Because or can it be a game the Vols won and they overcame the worst call ever?
You said what now?
Does it have to be a game the Vols lost?
No.
Because I'm going 2001 Florida. Those 2 Rex Grossman fumbles. It's the only time I ever saw Fulmer lose his mind at the ref. It was the one in the swamp. Rex Grossman fumbled on back-to-back drives, and both times they ruled Rex Grossman down on those drives. And Al Ford was the official at the time. And man, Phil Fulmer laid into Al Ford. That it's the only time I ever saw Fulmer lay into an official. And it didn't matter because Tennessee won anyway. But,
so right now people are saying caught up in the moment, looking out for the tops. I certainly hope that isn't the case, but it probably is. I mean, here's the thing you have to remember about bad calls. And I like to give the officials the benefit of the doubt. But is SEC football better with Alabama in the hunt for a national championship and an SEC title? Is SEC basketball in particular better off with Kentucky in the hunt for a national title or Final Four run? I would say yes and yes. So do I think there's some sort of handshake, wink, wink thing going on? No, I really don't. But would it stun me? It wouldn't stun me if the official said, it would certainly help Kentucky and it would be a big factor. I mean, after watching that, what was it, the Donaghy documentary recently, it doesn't take a lot for one guy to get kind of sideways with the bookies and then suddenly he's being managed a little bit. But I just think that if you're around SEC basketball in particular, that Kentucky's the premier team. So they're going to get the benefit of some calls. I don't think it's as bad with Alabama as a lot of people think. And I know that who's the announcer that gets caught up in that all the time? My goodness, help me with that. Gary Danielson.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they're officially against Tennessee. I don't think he goes. I think he just looks at exactly what's happening, and more times than not, Alabama's the better team.
I kind of agree. Just a heads up, Caleb Jaru, one of our reporters, just texted us, and he brought up that it's bad that I haven't mentioned the Saints NFC Championship game a few years ago, where a former Vol, Alvin Kamara, got wiped out on what was clearly a pass interference.
Yeah. That was definitely a bad call. All right, coming up on the program, we're going to talk about some all-time University of Tennessee top performances in the Super Bowl, who had the biggest impact in NFL history when it comes to Vols in the Super Bowl. And Travis says, worst call I've ever seen was South Carolina stopped Michigan on 4th, clearly and Clowney had to take it back. Well, the other one that we don't talk about is the 5th down, and that was
Colorado, Missouri.
Colorado, Missouri. I'm sorry, I almost said Michigan. Colorado, Missouri. That had to be an accident. They didn't just give them another.
Wait, is Dave Hooker admitting something in defense of Missouri?
Maybe a little bit. maybe just slightly.